incredibly excited to be able to welcome Cassandra Andrews and Brian Bush of Engaging Norfolk to talk to me today about engaging our teams during this very strange time. Before we leap into that though, would you like to just share a little bit about what Engaging Norfolk is? Brian, over to you.
Thank you very much. And just so you're clear, that's Cassandra. So Engaging Norfolk is an organisation that Cassandra spearheaded a few years back on the back of a very successful report commissioned by Business Innovation and Skills at the time, Peter Mandelson. They wanted to look at the engagement levels of UK workforce. And the report that came out really highlighted a number of areas which were culminated into 4 key specific points of interest, if you like. And those points of interest, which we'll talk about a little bit more during the course of this interview, are strategic narrative, engaging managers, employee voice, and organisational integrity. Now, Cassandra being Cassandra and being the powerhouse and amazing human being that she is, wanted to take that to an ability to promote awareness of those key factors in relation to employee engagement and therefore business success effectively, and set up Engaging Norfolk. And then after she had badgered me every day for 17 weeks to help her, I finally relented and said yes. I've been very, very proud to have joined her in this journey. She's an amazing person to work with, and the ability to go and talk to other organisations and centre on other organisations that, as you did, Rebecca, recently with Employee Voice, can come along and talk to other people and help them learn from the experience of great organisations like yours at Fountain Partnership as well. So we're out there engaging and helping people to learn about how to engage with their employees more effectively and how to promote the engagement of their workforce as well. Is that okay, Cassandra? Did I cover it well?
Brilliantly.
I guess I'm going to, before we leap into our main topic, which is about sort of adapting engagement planning for these remote working times, one of the things that I love about employee engagement in general is that it's not just that it's really nice to do, but it's also that it's really effective and impactful. So maybe, Cassandra, can you speak a little bit to that about, so why engagement? Why do we care about this?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I mean, the evidence is there without doubt that those businesses that are engaged are better results at the end of the day, and are better places to work. And so part of my reason actually for setting up Engaging Norfolk was when I set up my business, which is all around motivation and engagement. People were saying to me, well, what is engagement? Why should I care? Is it recruitment? And I was thinking, gosh, do you really not kind of understand the importance of this? So that was kind of the passion to kind of make sure that the businesses in Norfolk specifically, which is my passion, can really attract and retain talent, and they're doing all of those things that they need to do. And as Brian said, we're going to talk a little bit later about some of the enablers of engagement that were discovered in the report, and actually how we can now look at them and think about them when we're thinking about COVID and what we need to be doing with our different types of workforce that we have in the business.
Brilliant. So that brings us beautifully onto COVID. So obviously, we're recording this on the 9th of June. We are still under a form of lockdown, and we are also, I think all of us in the business community are looking at what lockdown actually means for us. So for example, for Fountain, we can work remotely. So should we just continue to work remotely? Should we have an office in the future? If in case any of my team are listening or watching this, yes, we will have an office in the future, don't worry. But there are just lots of questions about it that are floating around. And so I think we're all shifting what we have to do in order to be good leaders and good managers and work well with people. So my question to you is, in your experience of working with organisations across, I was going to say Norfolk, but actually the world as well, what are the things that we can be looking at in our organisations that we should really focus on now during lockdown or in our extended remote working phase to make sure that we don't drop the ball on engagement?
Yeah, sorry, Cassandra, I'm just going to lead on that and then let you.
Surprise.
Sorry. So one of the things I think to caveat with first is that for the majority of businesses, pretty much without doubt, COVID has been a really, really challenging time. And if you look at the headline aspects of that from day one, it's all about survival. We've got a number of businesses that weren't sure about where their income was coming from at all. Are they in a position with a positive cash flow? Do they need to go and secure funding? Where do they place their workforce? And what do they do if you're a manufacturing business and you can't manufacture any longer? What do you do? And beneath that, even with Rebecca, you made a really important statement earlier about care. And one of the important things is for an organisation, do we care enough to be bothered about this situation of employee engagement and motivation? So what the business owner and the leadership of that organisation has to do is to be able to cope with what's going to hit them from day one coming forward. And meanwhile, look at this aspect of the employee engagement that sits below the surface, which is absolutely vital when they come out of this, because they've got to have a loyal workforce that wants to continue with them, not one that feels a little bit disgruntled about how they were treated through that process. And that's I just wanted to make that headline statement really to lead into then there's that pressure that already sits there, and then we've got to take a view of how we work with those people through it, because they're truly our assets in our business as well.
And on that, I do think, and I've been having this conversation with quite a lot of people, that in the future, people will be saying when they come for interview, what did you do with your people during COVID? How did you treat them? That is going to be a question of the future. So it's a sobering thought, isn't it, for business leaders at the moment? And as Brian says, such a tricky balance between surviving and making sure your people are okay. I've put quite a lot of posts on LinkedIn. My hat is well and truly off to all business leaders at the moment that are absolutely doing the best they possibly can in the most extreme of circumstances. And I've been so impressed by so many people, because we're all human, even leaders of business, and you, Rebecca, some of the stuff that we've spoken about, it's amazing, and it's difficult, isn't it? But
I'm really lucky at Fountain that there were 4 directors, so there were, because there were moments where I would personally be feeling so overwhelmed and not ready to talk to the team in a reassuring and calm way, not feeling like I can take that step back, but instead thinking, oh my God, what are we going to do? And then there were other times that I was able to do that. And the fact that I had several moments of thinking, I'm so grateful that there are the 4 of us and that we can spread out that load, that communication, that reassurance, rather than it all being on one person who is also, business is always a roller coaster, but the COVID roller coaster has been huge.
Yeah.
And it's the constant uncertainty, isn't it? That you don't know if you're making the right decisions because you don't actually know what's happening.
I keep reassuring myself with that at least no one did. At least there were no experts out there, right? There were just all of us doing our best. And
yeah.
So then we could definitely talk to people who've been through previous recessions, who've dealt with different, some companies have had to adapt during the SARS epidemics and that kind of thing. So we could definitely talk and learn, but not feel like we're millions of miles behind everyone else for whatever reason. Because actually, can I say the word unprecedented?
Yeah, just did. Just did.
All right.
Yeah.
Back to your original question, I think what's interesting at this point in time in terms of, and challenging for businesses, is that there's probably 3 kind of distinct types of employee in the business at the moment. So there are those people that you may have furloughed that have their own kind of set of needs, and then there are those people that are working at home, again with a different set of needs, and then there are the people that are still working, still making the business kind of running, again with another set of needs. So actually managing all of those needs is challenging for leaders. And I think the biggest thing around that is actually you're unintentionally, because of the circumstances, potentially making kind of silos of different types of people with, and a kind of them and us situation, potentially, if you don't manage it correctly.
I think sorry, you go ahead, Brian.
Sorry, Rebecca. I was just going to mention, I think on the back of that point, in a business on a normal day to day, we would have, whatever industry you may be in, you may get your leadership, your managers that will do, what we could refer to as walking the floor. And that walking the floor mentality will be, me saying, Rebecca, how are you today? How are things? And it's that sort of opportunity to have some open feedback. And if we don't replace that with a remote worker or a furloughed worker for that matter, there's a big gap that could be missing that just widens and widens by the time we open the doors again. And it's really important, I think, and Cassandra will touch on more of this in relation to her experience, that there's a real point in ensuring that we replace the communication that we have in the business with the communication that we provide outside of the business in these unprecedented times. And it is, as you said, Rebecca, there's no right or wrong in relation to this. There's what we do, and we can only do what we think is the correct path for the business, but we have to do something. We have to ensure that those important, tangible points in a business that make us so successful are replaced in some form in the way in which we operate now under this new sort of landscape that we're living in currently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also the transitional points coming out of the current landscape.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I found really interesting is those, the difference in the conversations with people who are saying, when things get back to normal, and other people who are saying, this is the new normal, and then other people who are saying, this is a point in time where we're probably not going to get back to what we had before, but we're not going to say like this either. And there's such it's actually quite, we had a coaching session for our leadership team all together with the amazing coach Michael Neal, who pretty much said to us that you just have to take a deep breath and recognize that the old normal has gone. And if you need to grieve for it, take time to do that and move forward, and then look towards what the next normal, the new normal will be, what the future brings. And I think it was a really key moment for us as leaders to have that thing. We're not desperately trying to get back to get through and out the other side and past and back to normal, but instead saying, okay, how are we building now in the future?
Yeah, and I think very briefly as a point, in business, what's behind us matters, but it's what's going forward that counts. It's what we affect going forward that makes a difference to our business. It's only about learning from what we've done. So if we reflect on that for too long, we could miss those opportunities that come along, because we have to go forward with whatever that future looks like for us now, or the one we create for that matter as well. And just coming back on track again a little, it's that aspect of ensuring that asset value in our employees, and back to that really important point about care. If we care about our staff, this should be the normal, the natural for us, and we should really want to ensure that they're as happy at home as they are at work, they're as happy furloughed as they are fully employed, and as we bring them back into the workplace, that we're really, really ensuring their motivation and their engagement levels are as high as they humanly can be as well. And that's going to take some work and some understanding.
I think what's quite interesting is, so I use a tool with my clients called Engagement Multiply, which is a kind of pulse survey tool. And one of the things that they've identified is that lots of businesses are saying, oh, we're so much more engaged now, and we've got this kind of greater purpose. But don't fall into what they're calling the COVID trap. And this is so true, that actually, yes, people in businesses have all got this common purpose of let's survive COVID and let's get back to work and whatever it might be. But actually, when the common purpose of COVID is gone, if your business doesn't have an actual true purpose at the core of its business, then those people are no longer going to be engaged. So it's a bit like it's fake. And so, it's really important that businesses actually do think about their purpose, despite kind of COVID, and why they exist.
That's a really good point, Cassandra, as well, because when we look at the natural psychology of us as humans, we're born into behavioural standards and we're born into morals and principles, and we have to ensure that to be aligned to a workplace and be cemented into it, those things match. So the behavioural standards, the principles, the culture and the dynamic that exists in the business has got to align to us to make us want to achieve that purpose. So we have that aim. And it's very important now, as we've had great businesses that will have had that structure, in them can ensure that that structure is evident when those people come back to work as well, and we're still ticking all those boxes both ways to ensure that we've got reports that indicate that most businesses now, most workers are becoming transformationally linked as opposed to transactionally linked. And we see that in lots of large organisations around the globe. And that's a really important point not to miss. It's not just about the money, even though Tom Cruise once told us it was. But it's about that engagement level of people as well. And we've got to ensure that we recreate that workplace for them as we come back to that, should we need to. It's vital to have that asset value truly aligned to your purpose as an organisation as well.
So thinking about it in terms of under these remote circumstances, I think for different businesses, they'll go on for different amounts of times, right? So as I mentioned for Fountain, there's no need to rush back. So then it's thinking about, okay, how do we work? For other businesses, they are not working unless they are physically there. So of course they're back. They might have been back for quite a while already. But under remote circumstances, how do you engage your team? How do you put things in place that really that make sure that your employees are actively engaged?
I think, should we talk about some of the different types of workers then, because that probably would be helpful for people that might be listening. So those people that are remote working, like your team, for example, Rebecca, I do think one of the biggest things for them is actually just, if you're the manager of that person, thinking about actually, firstly, what motivates them, because everybody is motivated by something different, and secondly, what are their personal circumstances? Because they might be trying to homeschool, even though certain years have gone back, some people, are still homeschooling, or they might have people that are vulnerable or other responsibilities. So actually, really making sure you understand their personal circumstances, because obviously that's going to affect the way that they work. Would absolutely be something that I think managers need to be kind of aware of. And I think it depends on the culture of your business. So there are some businesses that are very friendly, and the culture is kind of very kind of together. And so those people that are remote working, they are going to miss that. So if people are motivated by kind of a sense of belonging and community, well, how are you creating that for them? I joke about kind of Friday night at the Furloughed Arms, for example. I know some businesses are doing, or loads of businesses seem to be doing quizzes and all sorts of other things that are fantastic and innovative ideas. But also it is as much, I think, about the checking in and understanding around actually, what do you expect of me whilst I'm working at home? Because those expectations are, when we talk about strategic narrative and kind of understanding the role you play in the business, actually it's the same when you're at home. What is expected of you? Brian, was there anything you wanted to add?
Not yet. I think you're doing really well.
Love you. So then if we think about furloughed workers, I think the biggest thing for furloughed workers, obviously a lot of them potentially might now, their period of furlough might be extended, and to help support the business financially. So that you have this group of people that might be feeling potentially less valued than the rest of their colleagues, or so they perceive it. And if you don't manage that process in the right way, I was speaking to a business leader last week that has really kind of instilled, by you being furloughed, you are helping support the business. That's what you're doing for us. And I just think that's just wonderful that that's what he's kind of saying to them. What you're doing is important. So making sure that you reassure them, however that looks like, and so I really think it's important that you ask, what communication do you want, because everyone wants something different. As I alluded to earlier, we're all motivated by different things, and people will will want different types of communication in different ways, and some of them might want to still go to the furlough arms on a Friday, and some of them might not. And just making sure, I guess, that they have those opportunities to kind of still feel part of the business, because if you don't treat them right in terms of how they want to be treated, you risk bringing back toxic employees into your business, and who at a time of crisis wants toxic employees in their business?
There's a really important point on furloughed workers as well, and it's on the flip side of what you just identified. So if you're a furloughed worker on £30,000 a year, and you've currently learned to survive on £24,000 a year because you're not with an employer that's topped you up, that £24,000 or £26,000 job down the road that looked a bit funky and cool 6 months ago, but you couldn't afford to take a drop in salary, may suddenly seem a lot more attractive if you're not fully aligned to the purpose of your employer. So there's consideration in there as well. Now, I'll appreciate that furloughed workers will have reduced their outgoings in relation to travel and so on, but nevertheless, that could be a whole psychological shift in those individuals to think, actually, I'm going to make a change now because I don't need that much money to live on. We've got by, we're okay, I'm going to go and do something I really love, and I'm not as attuned to this particular business as I thought I was.
And I know a number of businesses that have got furloughed employees where it looks like they're going to be made redundant, and they know that their partners are also being made redundant. So there is, all of this, stress and anxiety. So, the more you can do in terms of kind of reassurance. And I think the biggest thing that you can do as a leader, and I know you talk about this, Rebecca, is, just be really super honest. I talk a lot about vulnerability, and actually, if you don't know, say you don't know, because actually people will have far more respect for you as a leader of a business, I believe, if you say, I don't know. And even asking people, importantly, in fact, one of the biggest motivators I find for people is a motivator called Searcher, which is about kind of meaning and purpose and being able to make a difference. And one of the biggest things for them is about collaboration. So actually asking their opinion is something that is so important to so many people.
Brilliant. So in terms of those different motivators, I know that one of the tools that you use a lot, Cassandra, is motivational maps. Could you tell us a little bit about how they work within businesses and how they are used to improve engagement?
Yes, absolutely. With motivational maps, so they are quite different to kind of what would be normal profiling tools, which normally look at personality, which we would say is kind of innate in you, whereas motivational maps looks at the motivation of people at a given point in time. So it takes a snapshot of how motivated you are as an individual, but we all have kind of 9 motivators in us. So what the map will do is it will kind of identify how important the different motivators are for us. And what's really deeply interesting is then how fulfilled each of those motivators are. So we ourselves can nourish those motivators, because the only person that can motivate us is us. But as a manager of somebody, especially coming back to work, or if you've got people that are working at home or furloughed, I know as your manager actually what really motivates you. So I know how I need to manage you and change my style to make sure that you feel reassured and to get the best performance out of you. And so what it's doing is it's putting hard metrics around what several people might consider a little bit pink and fluffy in terms of motivation. Well, we know it's not, because actually we can see that this person is 50% motivated or 80% motivated. And then we can see, when we put teams of people together, actually this is why that relationship works well, and this is why that team's doing well, or actually this is why there's some potential kind of tension and conflict, and how can we reframe that to really get the best out of kind of each other and become proper high performing teams. But the fact that motivation changes, and it's interesting because I've done so many maps with people that have been kind of clients for some time, and they said, oh, actually I want you to map my team now with kind of COVID and to see how motivation has changed. And it's so interesting, and for lots of people, unsurprisingly, one of the motivators that is far more important is about security. That's a no-brainer, isn't it, really? But once you know what motivates somebody, then you can, help reassure them.
And I think, sorry, Rebecca, just quickly, when we align that to Gallup's last report on motivation in UK workforce as well, it's staggering the number of people that are demotivated in their employed status, and that pink and fluffy mentality will go a long way to changing the culture and the thought process of those individuals to make them far more motivated and therefore far more profitable to your organisation and far more efficient in relation to your build and structure of the business as well. It's a vital key component of a successful business.
What I would love is for businesses to have spreadsheets of motivation. For me, if that's on your dashboard every week, month, whatever, then for me, you are a forward-thinking business.
Start with a motivational map. Contact details are on the pop-up at the back.
But I think it's really interesting as well, because I think, we talk about in digital marketing a lot that if you don't measure it, how can you improve it? And so it's that even that point of measuring is a moment where you focus. I talk about that a lot in our gender pay gap. We've been measuring our gender pay gap since we started hiring people, and our gender pay gap is incredibly close to 0.03% or something. And we haven't done that proactively apart from measure. Just the fact that whenever we hire someone, that metric is pulled through and I see it. It's not that I've ever said, oh no, sorry, we can't hire that very experienced man right now because that would put our gender pay gap out. But just the fact that I measure it has made it very easy to keep on top of. And I think there's something about that, whether it's motivation or well-being or all of those aspects. The second you have a mechanism to take the pulse, it becomes more important.
Yeah,
I think
people, doesn't it? This is important to us.
I remember, Rebecca, when your business was the lone voice in ROI marketing, return on investment marketing, and it was against the grain of everybody else in industry. And you and Marcus stood up there proudly with a view that you were going to disrupt it without the outlook to disrupt it, just about doing it properly and understanding that when a client makes an investment, there should be a return that's tangible, that you can point at and judge the organisation against. And that was such a brave standpoint for you folks. But as we look along the journey of Fountain, we've seen that that's put you in the position with Google that you become in, which is number one if people aren't aware of that. And that aspect is true in relation to this pivotal moment we find ourselves now in, I believe. It's about people like Cassandra and I and others in organisations as well, yourselves and James Groves and a bunch of other people as well, standing up to understand that actually the asset value of employees is where that efficiency and profitability sits. And we can benchmark these things if we care enough to find out what that benchmark is. And then once a result becomes a tangible result with a goal that you can aim for, we can start to improve the business accordingly. And even for a financial director in a business, if we can align that growth to the numbers and crunch those numbers accordingly with a turn in our profits and in our efficiency, therefore affecting our profits, that's a great game changer in business. It really is. And it sits at our disposal. It's the thing, it always has. And I think we're starting to see more now how important it becomes.
It's so funny. It's why I love the whole concept of company cultures, because not only is it good for people, but it is also good for business. So we can sit there and say it's genuinely win-win. Like not only people are happy, but they will work better and be more profitable because of it. So it's sort of it's a beautiful system that works together when you invest in it and when you put energy into it.
But I do think when you do it properly, like you're a great example, and I talk about this a lot. Employee engagement is not a ping pong table.
My thing at the minute is you can't hack culture. There aren't culture hacks. You can't say, out here, funky graphic there, done, kind of thing. It has to be a focus that, you have to value it. You really do. And if you don't value it, it's going to be very hard to actually translate it into something that works. But it's also something that is, you know, I think like so many other things, you see through it. Like the second someone says, oh my God, we've got this great culture, and you see everyone, like the energy in the room is low.
It's as Cassandra and I talk about in relation to the leadership and development work that we both do, it's about transformation. It's about, again, caring enough about the organisation that you represent to want to see an end goal which transforms the culture and the entirety of the structure and framework within the organisation as well. And the really other important thing, to go back to something that Cassandra mentioned a few minutes ago, is I remember you well standing up at the UEA talking about your business and the absolute authenticity that shone through when you spoke, and which lots of people have commented on since, both publicly and privately to me. And that's an important part of this journey as well, absolute honesty in relation to where you are now and where you want to go, to get everybody in line and on board with you to ensure they want that purposeful journey too.
I wonder whether there's something about the COVID experience that will be beneficial to all of us with this, partly because like there was that wonderful moment where you suddenly realised that LinkedIn wasn't business to business anymore, it was person to person. And everyone, I mean, similarly, internally at Fountain, of course, I know who has children and I know where people go on holiday. I now know who has gardens, who has a balcony. The conversations that we're having are going deeper, they're more authentic, they're like, we're able to be more open with each other. So maybe that's one of the positives that we can take from this crazy time, is actually carrying that on through and not going back to that business to business space where actually people ended up, I mean, I often wonder why it is that leaders aren't automatically authentic. And I think that like that training of what professional is, if we can just ditch that view of professionalism and instead say professional is turning up wholeheartedly, caring, doing everything that you can to drive something forward with sort of all of that focus, then like let's make that the new professional rather than the business suit and the I've commented on LinkedIn quite a lot about, I disagree with that view a little bit. I don't think LinkedIn's been anything but personal throughout its entirety. And the point is, it's kind of been hijacked by this professional view, but to be professional, we have to be our true self, in my view. Now, Cassandra and I have done quite a lot of work with Barclays around the region over the last few months, and that work has been directly linked into their personal engagement within the community when they go out there. And that's about their altruistic self. That's about relationship development before we start to ask for the sale. Because unless we follow that true remit of know, like, trust, and we adapt to that model exactly, we won't sell anything to anyone. So we've got to have those component parts, and that starts with us. That starts with the relationship development and that start point. And that's where altruism, honesty, and our inner self has to be so readily available to all. And people connect with people they align to. We don't connect with bank managers, and bank managers aren't born bank managers, neither are accountants. You weren't born the now no longer CEO of Fountain, but previous CEO of Fountain. I couldn't quite remember what you'd become, so I apologise there. And so we don't have those things, so we've got to bring ourselves forward. And that's so important in relation to this engagement journey, because people like the vulnerability of their employer to know they're just like they are, and they can go and knock on their door when they've got a problem. It's vital. It's vital. It's all about simple human relationship development.
I think what's interesting, as you say, Rebecca, is that it is, to use the word, it's kind of humanised people, hasn't it? Like you were talking about, kind of your team. So, you know, to see your MD or chief exec in their house, like that's a big deal for people, isn't it? You know, and to have, you know, the kids rush in, or the dog, or whatever it might be, that says something very different about kind of the business. And I'm really interested to see kind of what leaders will do when they kind of go back into the workplace, and those, like you say, that will kind of embrace that as actually this is a really good thing, and those that will possibly get a bit vulnerable about it.
Yeah. And uncomfortable. Yeah. It is. I mean, vulnerability isn't always comfortable.
No. Absolutely.
It's not a nice journey for anyone to approach our own vulnerabilities, but it's so important and strong to do that. It's not a weakness in individuals, it's a pure strength to get past those bits and understand we're all unique but similar as well.
Exactly. So before we wrap up, this conversation, which
do we really have to?
We could go on all day, couldn't we? Before we wrap up, I want to just ask whether you have any specific tips, advice, tools, things that if you are speaking with the leader of a business who is wondering how they can engage people remotely during this time, what are your top tips for them?
Should we talk about the enablers briefly? Because we haven't done that, and we said that we would. In the report that Brian alluded to, which is called the McLeod report, if people are interested and want to find it online, the 4 things were identified. Strategic narrative, which is about the story of your business and kind of where you come from and where you're going, so the whole kind of vision piece. Employee voice, which is, as it says, kind of giving your people a voice, and you very kindly came and spoke about employee voice at one of our events. And organisation integrity, which is about actually doing what you say you're going to do. And this, I think, is the thing that's really critical. So if you've got values on the wall currently in your workplace that say, we care, well, how are you showing your remote workers that you care? Is there a gap between that, for example? And finally, engaging managers, which is around people join an organisation and leave a manager. So actually, how are your managers supporting and coaching their people? And I think, I don't know what you think, Brian, but certainly one of the biggest things that I think that comes up is communication. And that for me encompasses all of those enablers, and people want communication in different ways, and communication means different things to different people. So for some people it's about the vision of the business, for some people it is about kind of operational work that you want me to complete today. And so really getting your managers to ask their people kind of what they want, and to continue asking what they want kind of throughout the whole journey, I think is one of the most important things. And I think I mentioned earlier Engagement Multiplier, which is one of the tools that I use. So they have adapted their free survey tool in light of COVID, and they've got this package called Emerging Stronger, which is really to support businesses for free, so that you can kind of see where your business is at the moment, what's changed, what's working, what's not working, what adjustments might need to be made. You can kind of capture new learnings and insights. And the best bit is it kind of takes less than 10 minutes and it's really easy to set up. So actually it's that voice in terms of what's important. So I absolutely would say, kind of under that employee voice piece, that's a really helpful thing for people. Brian, anything else?
I think I'd probably just add that you shouldn't be limited by what you don't know as a business owner. We always make this statement, we don't know what we don't know, and it's so true all the time. Don't be fearful of not having an answer. Go out there and seek it. That may well be reading a book, and there's plenty of them out there around this subject matter, reading a report, as Cassandra mentioned, or it may be talking to someone that you believe can help you as well, and reaching out to someone. There's plenty of opportunities and people on LinkedIn, us included. The thing I think as well is to say that Cassandra and I both do this for a living, in slightly different areas that complement each other very, very well. But we're available, and we're not an immediate price point, because we're there and we're going to help people, and we're not going to shut the door to them. And whilst I couldn't guarantee everything we do is free of charge, what I can guarantee is it's value-led, and it's going to be linked to the enhancement of profitability in your business without a shadow of a doubt. And there's people that are available to help on that journey and help with that what we don't know part as well. Because the biggest risk, the worst decision to make, is not to take a decision at all, because that's still your decision, but it's one you have no control over, and that's the worst place to be in a business, I think.
I agree, absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for joining me for this video. It will, I'm sure that a lot of people out there will be sort of cluing in to get, as you say, having information out there about ideas of what we can look at. Some businesses are doing all of this and doing it brilliantly. Others are just starting a journey on to employee engagement and beyond, hopefully. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Speak to you again soon.
Thank you.
Zoom wave.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.